The end of the world is upon us, plunging the globe into chaos, yet there is one individual who possesses the chance to alter everything. Imagine for a moment if you were granted a second life, endowed with the power to rewrite your destiny. What would you do? Wei Ran has been given such an opportunity. Not only has she returned to the age of 18, but she has also acquired supernatural spatial abilities. Chapter 1. Rebirth. No, don't. Please don't leave me. I know I was wrong, I killed you. Ah. Brother Wei Ran sat up suddenly in a dream. She covered her face and held back her sobs, but she still couldn't break free from the dream. The room was hot and foggy, and the fog in the mirror was wiped away, revealing an elegant, refined, and slightly childish face, but in the eyes was a girl who was stable but not suitable for her age. She looked at the fair and tender face in the mirror, and slid her fingers from the corners of her eyes to her cheeks. Here the eyebrows and eyes are picturesque, but at that time it was disfigured, with a scar from top to bottom, hideous and terrifying. It was drawn by her so-called best friend. The most unforgivable thing is that I was foolish and fell in love with the wrong person, and even killed my brother Muzikang because of it. Fortunately, she still has a chance. Yes, she is reborn. Wei Ran, who committed suicide in her previous life when all thoughts were hopeless, returned to 5 years ago, when she was 18 years old. This time I will never let anyone hurt my brother again, including myself. After washing off the sweat on her body, she put on clean home clothes and walked out of her room. She gently unscrewed the door of the room next to hers. The dark decoration inside told that a man lived here. She walked to a big bed inside, lifted the quilt and lay down in it. A familiar coldness mixed with the smell of tobacco surrounded Wei Ran. She took a deep breath as if possessed, which calmed Wei Ran's restless heart. According to the memories of the previous life, my brother went on a business trip to the American branch where he didn't need to go because he was angry with her at this time. Wei Ran hid herself under the quilt and murmured, "Tonight, I can see my brother tonight." Meanwhile, America. Brother Chang, the bodyguards in the villa reported that Xiao Ran hasn't gone out for the past few days, and she seems to be in a good mood. The bodyguards have been guarding the villa, Chen Wei reported cautiously. Since Wei Ran was so angry that he ran to the United States for the past few days, Mu Zikang, who was originally indifferent, was shrouded in layers of haze, which was even more terrifying. Everyone knows that young Master Mu's family has a little girl whom he loves the most, who has a good temper with everyone, but the one who treats Mu Zikang like a hedgehog and treats him like a hedgehog. Mu Zikang stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling windows in the cold, and did not respond to Chen Wei's report. He just raised his hand to look at the limited edition wristwatch, and then calculated the time in Huaguo in his heart. But when he thought of something, he put down his hand and made a fist. He was not at home, so she must be in a good mood. After a moment of silence. But in the end, she couldn't help but turn her head to the assistant and said coldly, "Go back to China." Chen Wei sighed in his heart. He was reluctant to let Wei Ran stay at home alone, and would rather be stabbed by Wei Ran with injuries all over his body. When will Wei Ran see the good of his family? It was already midnight when we returned to Huaguo. Mu Zikang walked up the stairs and stopped at the door of Wei Ran's room. Just as he was about to touch the lock with his hand, he recalled the scene from the previous few days. "Can't you give me some space? You're an out-and-out pervert." Mu Zikang's eyes were a little hurt. He was powerless to let go, took 2 steps back, and walked into his room. He didn't turn on the light, but his movement was not hindered at all. It was still like daytime. His dark eyes seemed to be faintly shining in the night. He had already discovered this ability when he was 10 years old, and he was panicked for a while at that time. Until the age of 12 or 15, I can hear the inner voice of others and hear the voice from any corner as long as I want to hear it. In the end, when he can control everything with his consciousness, and can transform various weapons at will when switching attacks, he will adapt and apply it. But what puzzled him the most was why he couldn't control Wei Ran's heart since he could control everything. He took a cold shower and walked to the bed, only to find a lump on the bed. He frowned slightly, and the quilt was flipped out of thin air. The dark pupils constricted, and Wei Ran curled up on his bed with her soft body. The moment the quilt was lifted, Wei Ran woke up with a start, turned over neatly and landed steadily, and turned on the bedside lamp at the same time. Then I saw Mu Ziking appearing on the other side. Her eyes turned red quickly, water mist poured into her eyes and she fixedly looked at Mu Ziking. Her pink lips parted but her throat was choked and she couldn't say anything. A drop of water pearls fell straight down like a string. Brother. In her previous life, after Mu Ziking died trying to save her, she lived alone for 2 years. During those 2 years, countless such dreams appeared every night, but when she woke up, she was still desolate alone. Every time she wakes up from such a warm dream, Mu Ziking, who keeps reminding her repeatedly, is gone. So when meeting Mu Ziking, Wei Ran couldn't tell the difference between dreams and reality. She tried to take 2 steps closer to Mu Ziking, and the closer she got, the more she could smell the unique aura emanating from him, which had never happened in a dream. She realized that this was the real Mu Ziking. Her heart was shaking, and her body was shaking too. She immediately ran towards Mu Ziking, bumped into his broad and reliable arms, and hugged his waist tightly. There was the warmth she missed day and night and his strong heartbeat. After 2 years, she was finally able to see her favorite person again, not in a dream but in reality. Mu Ziking was stunned and then remembered that Wei Ran would do some inexplicable things in order to make himself promise something. Although such an act of getting close to him would never happen, it still made him suspicious. He remembered what happened before he went to the United States because Wei Ran said he wanted to study abroad. Immediately, his eyes became cold again, and he said in a cold tone, "What are you thinking this time? If you still want to go to study with that man, don't even think about it." Wei Ran heard Mu Ziking say, "That man," with a hint of hatred in his eyes. It was him who got together with his best friend and conspired to kill her favorite Mu Ziking, and if the strongest brother hadn't been protecting her, how could it be? But every time I think of this, regret erodes, painfully asked why he didn't want to trust the brother who treated him best in the world. Because she was too excited, she was still in a high state of mental tension, and she was still unable to speak, so she could only hug him tightly, and shook her head violently in response to him. Mu Ziking frowned, feeling uncomfortable. She would never get close to him in the past, avoiding him as far away as possible, not to mention holding on so tightly now. Wei Ran is an orphan adopted by his own Mu Ziking's mother from the orphanage. He grew up under the care and love of Mu's family members since he was a child. She thought that she had always regarded him as her elder brother, so one day she knew what he had in mind for her, and she didn't know how to deal with it, so she respected him from then on. It wasn't until after his parents had a plane crash during a trip that Mu Ziking lost control and kissed Wei Ran after drinking. He couldn't accept him even more, so that his attitude towards him became even worse. But no matter how Wei Ran treats him, Mu Ziking will bear it one by one, and is still unwilling to let go. Even if he knows that she likes someone else, he can only force Wei Ran to stay by his side with strong stones. He cruelly grabbed Wei Ran's petite shoulders with a little force and pushed her away. Looking down, she saw her small pear face with Rain and asked gloomily, "Who bullied you?" Chapter 2. Something was wrong with her. Wei Ran raised her wet and red eye sockets that had been washed away by tears. That pitiful look only made people want to pity her even more. If it was in the previous life, with Mu Ziking's tone like this, she would have thought that he was losing his temper again and again. But now she knew that Mu Ziking was worried about her. "What's the matter?" Seeing her pitiful appearance, Mu Ziking softened a little without realizing it. When Wei Ran heard Mu Ziking's change in tone, the tears that had finally been stopped began to fall again. "Brother, can you sleep with me? I'm alone at home these few days and Ran is very scared." She pinched the corner of Mu Ziking's clothes, choked with grievances and said, "Don't leave Ran anymore, Ran is alone." Wei Ran didn't know what shyness was anymore. She only wanted to stick with Mu Ziking, and she had already thrown the girl's reservedness 9 days away. Mu Ziking couldn't be found by Wei Ran's conflict tonight. If it is impossible to hug her, then sleeping with her is even more impossible. Also, she has not allowed him to call her by her nickname for a long time, and now she is still taking the initiative to call herself. All of this is wrong. Do you want to elope with that man while you let your guard down and sleep soundly? This is the only possible explanation for tonight's anomalies. Thinking of this, his whole body was cold, and he looked at Wei Ran coldly. Feeling the change in Music Kang's breath, Wei Ran knew that Music Kang didn't trust him and blamed himself for what he did. But it doesn't matter, now he can have a lot of time, and he can slowly let him trust himself again. Wei Ran wanted to take a step to the side, but Music Kang grabbed her slender wrist and stared at her darkly. She sniffed, wiped her small face carelessly with the back of her hand, pursed her lips and smiled, revealing 2 sweet dimples, and stretched out her tender hands to caress Music Kang's face. Gently comforting, I just want to find your mobile phone, and if you are worried, brother can ask Chen Wei to add more bodyguards, okay? Mu Chengji's consciousness detection can silently enter other people's minds to spy on other people's thoughts, but he has never entered Wei Ran's mind. Although he really wanted to do this, he was afraid that if he saw something he shouldn't see, he would lose control and accidentally hurt Wei Ran, making himself too late to regret. So even she, who was so abnormal tonight, was even more reluctant to detect it. Even without the ability, he can use his eyes to tell whether a person is lying or not. He carefully watched Wei Ran's every detail of emotion, but only saw the joy in his eyes. Music Kang has absolutely nothing to do with her. No matter what the reason is, she is willing to get close to him tonight, which is his biggest wish for so many years. He could only sigh softly, bent over her knees and hugged her horizontally, walked to the bed and put her down gently. With Wei Ran staring at her with watery eyes, she covered her with the quilt and lay down next to her. Wei Ran then wrapped her around, hugged his muscles and tightened his arms, and rested her head on his strong shoulders. Music Kang's body tensed up immediately, and he looked down just in time to see Wei Ran's blush-stained little face, as well as the looming part in the loose neckline of the home clothes. Music Kang closed his eyes, trying to calm himself down. After a while, he suddenly opened his eyelids and suddenly withdrew her arm. Wei Ran looked at him in surprise. Immediately afterwards, Music Kang's strong arm passed through his back shoulder and hugged her tightly. Music Kang's other slender hand tightly wrapped around her slender waist, and he turned over and covered her. Immediately, her thin lips grabbed her pink lips and pried open her teeth, only to chase after that pink tongue. Everything was too sudden. Wei Ran's wide eyes slowly closed, and her hands wrapped around Music Kang's neck. After the kiss, both of them panted slightly. Music Kang hugged the confused Wei Ran. His heart was full of tenderness, and he kissed her forehead with broken bangs. Go to sleep. The dark and hoarse voice showed how forbearing the master really was. Wei Ran's blush covered her whole body. She didn't dare to say a word, she just hugged him tightly and nodded slightly. Then she lay her pillow on his heart and slowly fell asleep listening to his heartbeat. Music Kang listened to her gentle breathing after falling asleep, and slowly fell into a dream. The morning sun came in through the cracks in the thick curtains, sprinkled in the room to add a little warmth. Wei Ran's long eyelashes trembled on the bed. She stretched out her hand to the side, only to feel a piece of ice cold. She suddenly opened her eyelids, sat up, and looked around the room. It's my brother's room. Was it just a dream last night? She threw off the quilt in a panic, forgot even her slippers, opened the door and went downstairs. Brother. Wei Ran did not give up and called out in the silent villa, but no one responded, just like in the previous life. Wei Ran squatted down, just about to shed tears. At this time, the combination lock of the door was being pressed open. The bodyguards are usually stationed outside and they won't come in unless necessary. And who it is at this time is self-evident. Sure enough, when the door opened, he saw Music Kang, who was obviously sweating and came back from running. She ran over and hugged him and said aggrievedly, "Brother, I didn't see you when I woke up." Music Kang patted her back comfortingly. He who is used to talking coldly now has a little more tenderness. "I just went for a run. Are you hungry? I've already made breakfast. I'll go upstairs and take a shower. Then warm it up and eat together, okay?" Then he pushed her away a little, and saw that she was not wearing slippers. He frowned slightly and said in dissatisfaction, "Why don't you wear shoes? It's late autumn now, and it's easy to catch cold." Wei Ran likes to hear him talking all the time, saying that he likes her, worried about her words. She hung her hands on the back of Mu Zikeng's neck. Her mischievous eyes said, "It's in your room. You hug me up." Mu Zikeng turned his hands for clouds and rain outside, but only for Wei Ran at home. There is no way. He pinched her small and tall nose, then picked her up like a child, walked up to the second floor, walked into his room, and put her lightly on the bed. He told her to wait for him to come out. While he was taking a shower, Wei Ran also went back to her room to wash up. After the death of Mu's parents, Mu Zikeng cooked for a while, but after Mu Zikeng lost control, although Wei Ran didn't live in school, she ate at school before coming back. As time passed, Mu Zikeng no longer waited for her to eat. Later, when supplies were often in short supply in the last days, and even a vegetable was hard to come by, there was very little opportunity to cook, and even if she did, she would be dumped by her white-eyed wolf. Now she can eat seafood porridge made by Mu Zikeng again, and she still eats it with Mu Zikeng. He is alive, he is real, and my heart is full of enthusiasm. The bodyguard came in from the outside, saw Wei Ran, looked a few more times in surprise, and then withdrew his emotions and reported to Mu Zikeng, "Young Master Mu, Master Cheng and Miss Jai are here." Mu Zikeng's eyes flashed sternly, turned to stare at Wei Ran. Wei Ran, who was in a good mood at first, immediately turned black when he heard these two people. "I don't want to see these two people. Tell them to go away." Chapter 3. The beginning of the end is still here. The captain of the bodyguard was shocked when he saw Wei Ran's reaction. Everyone knows that Wei Ran likes Chang Shuxian and how many times he has quarreled with Mu Zikeng because of this man. 4 days ago, he had a big fight with Chang Shuxian, who was going to study abroad, and Mu Zikeng. The bodyguard asked again, uncertainly, "Miss, it's Chang Shuxian and Ji Furong, aren't you there?" Wei Ran raised her eyes, filled with disgust and hatred, clenched her fists, and raised her voice sharply, "No. Don't allow them to take a step closer to the villa." The bodyguard captain immediately went out to carry out the order. After Mu Zikeng came in from the bodyguard to report, his dark eyes were fixed on Wei Ran's every subtle expression, but he didn't see any sign of lying at all. The corners of Mu Zikeng's mouth were tightly pursed, and he narrowed his eyes slightly in thought. He had a fight with Chang Shuxian only a few days ago, and now he is a completely different person. What happened these few days? Wei Ran noticed that Mu Zikeng was staring at her questioningly. She froze for a moment, but it wasn't certain whether the past life would happen now, and she couldn't explain the hatred and entanglement of these past lives for a while. Wei Ran understands that her reaction is too excited now, which will inevitably make people question it. But no matter what Mu Zikeng thought, she didn't want to deal with those two people slowly. Better never see each other. Otherwise, I can't help but kill them. But now my brother is fine. As long as this life doesn't happen again, nothing matters anymore. She took a few deep breaths, let go of her powder fist, stretched along the table, and covered Mu Zikeng's bone-clear and clean hand that was casually placed on the dining table. Trying to explain, I looked at Mu Zikeng with a little pleading, "Brother, you have not been here these few days and you have not contacted me. I am afraid that you will leave and stop talking to me. I just realized that I want to. It's only you, I just don't know how to respond to you. But now I understand it. I just want the two of us to be together, and don't let other irrelevant people harass us, okay?" Mu Zikeng seemed to be able to see her hidden secrets through her clear eyes. The pain in the eyes is reincarnated. No matter what caused her such a big change in a few days, Mu Zikeng could still tell whether it was real or not. Especially the phrase "other irrelevant people" completely pleased Mu Zikeng. The only thing he wanted all these years was her. Mu Zikeng held Wei Ran's hand with his palm up, his face showing a rare gentleness when he was used to indifference, and a smile flashed in his eyes. "Okay, I'll listen to you." Since Mu Zikeng came back, Wei Ran and pestered him to sleep with her every night. She got up early today because she realized yesterday that she was only 18 years old and still in her freshman year. In the previous life, the end would not come until 3 months later, but in this life, everything is still unknown, so she can only watch things develop step by step. Chapter 4. Wei Ran. looked at Mu Zikang with worried eyes. Brother, I don't know how many supplies we can prepare now, but it is better than having nothing in the previous life, and we are still everywhere, was restrained. But I'm afraid that Mu Zikang still doesn't believe it. Mu Zikang raised his hand and squeezed her petite shoulders, comforted her stiff body, and said softly, "Don't be afraid, I'm already making arrangements." "Do you trust me?" Wei Ran stared blankly. Mu Zikang. "It takes a lot of money to prepare supplies." Wei Ran thought that Mu Zikang would not believe such a fantasy, but he did. Mu Zikang stroked her broken hair back to her ears, and with a tenderness on his lips, he talked about the ins and outs of all this. The United States sent the spaceship to see the traces of life on a planet called Asla. "See what's going on? This is something I knew about half a year ago." The loss of contact with the spaceship didn't happen just today. It had already lost contact with the United States a month ago, but it has not been made public, and that this matter is classified as a major secret. If the United States hadn't searched for some undisclosed secrets, it would have been impossible to keep trying to block the news. That's why I only thought of this when you talked about your dream. When you said the next day, I already started preparing supplies. Wei Ran looked at Mu Zikang unexpectedly. Her elder brother was indeed the strongest. He made a decisive decision without hesitation, and he was able to gain insights from the most subtle points to string together the whole thing. She hugged Mu Zikang excitedly, but she was also worried. Not only food, clothing, and daily necessities are hoarded in large quantities, but also ammunition, which is the most difficult. Weapons are the most important in the end of the world. The attack power of alien species is very strong, and only weapons can protect themselves. When the electricity and water were cut off at the beginning, many people stayed at home and waited for rescue, until finally aliens appeared and turned the whole city into a dead city. People who are short of supplies will rob other people's supplies at all costs to survive, so in the beginning, many people died not from aliens, but from human hands. In this kind of turmoil, in about half a year, those who have the ability and material wealth will start to build bases and organize discipline, and when the whole society returns to class struggle, those who have nothing and need shelter will be at the bottom of society. If there was no Mu Zikang at that time, she would have been reduced to the bottom class, and she might be some man's plaything. Mu Zikang looked at Wei Ran's wrinkled face, smiled, and said something that shocked Wei Ran. "Why do I know the internal secrets of the United States? Because I have been in the military and fire business in the United States for so many years, and I can have whatever weapons I want." After another month, Mu Zikang told Wei Ran not to go to school, and she went through the formalities of suspending school and fired all the bodyguards at home. During this period of time, Mu Zikang was preparing supplies, and at this moment the biggest problem arose. Materials are now easy, but how to take them away? The sheer volume of supplies is too eye-catching and too dangerous. As the saying goes, don't expose your wealth. According to her understanding of the end of the world, human beings can evolve supernatural skills, but she has never heard of the supernatural power of the reserve. On this day, Wei Ran was hanging clothes on the top floor of the villa while meditating on storage issues. She turned around to get the hanger at the back, but when she turned back, she found that the clothes in her hand were gone. Wei Ran frowned slightly and looked around, but she couldn't find any clothes. Although she was surprised, she didn't feel relieved. Maybe it was because she kept thinking about things and forgot where she put them. However, such things happen frequently. At 12 o'clock in the evening, the sound of the engine of the cart came from far to near, and then it stopped outside the gate of the villa, and the electric doorbell rang. Mu Zikang and Wei Ran, who had been waiting in the villa, opened the gate and let 2 carts full of supplies park in the yard. Then 3 people got out of the car. The assistant, Chen Wei, was sponsored by the Mu family since childhood and grew up with Mu Zikang. There was also Jiang Nanfeng, who was thrown at the door of Mu's villa when he was a baby, and only had one name on him. These 2 people, Wei Ran, knew each other well. They are all children rescued by the Mu family since childhood. The family either ran away because of poverty in the early years, or they don't know who their parents are at all. The third one was Guoming, who had only met a few times but passed by every time. He is a delicate man. Mu Ziking walked over and said he's in charge of managing the Myanmar country branch, and he's also in charge of military fire. Wei Ran opened her eyes slightly in disbelief. This gentle-looking man is in charge of high-risk secret work. Mu Ziking's trust is extremely difficult to give to others, but now let the three of them transport the supplies here. There is no doubt that it is Mu Ziking who can deliver the trust. So when Mu Ziking talked about the doomsday, they trusted Mu Ziking without saying a word. Brother Cheng, these 2 trucks are transported here according to what you said. The rest are still in the warehouse. Should they continue to stay there? I don't think they can fit here. Jiang Nanfeng looked at the yard. Jiang Nanfeng was 2 years younger than Mu Ziking, and he had always recognized Mu Ziking as the eldest brother to protect him. With a bad temper, if anyone says that Mu Ziking is not good, he will be the first to strike. Mu Ziking looked at the supplies and replied, "You don't need to take any more." Chen Wei frowned, and asked again, then according to what Brother Cheng said last time, "These 2 cars should not be enough for us to stay here." "Yes, then shall we take it then? We are only here for a while, and when the time is right, we will plan to go to other places." Wei Ran came over and replied with a smile, holding Mu Ziking's arm intimately. Chen Wei looked at the 2 people's intimacy with an epiphany on his face. It seems that Brother Cheng has been so beautiful for so many years. In the morning, Mu Ziking, Wei Ran and Gu Ming had breakfast in the restaurant on the first floor. Mu Ziking asked Chen Wei lightly, "How is the company's handling?" "According to Brother Cheng's order, we spread the news that we are going to sell the shares, but we still hang on to the group of greedy old antiques. The price is the highest," Chen Wei replied. Mu Ziking thought for a while and said, "Throw it away," and then continue to purchase supplies. Chen Wei responded. Mu Ziking looked at Wei Ran, who was typing away in a notebook. Seeing that she didn't move the breakfast on the table, he frowned. Ran, "I know you want the government to know about this, but don't mention it. Even the post you posted on the internet is ignored. Believe you have been banned one after another." But Wei Ran thought it would be good if more people could see it. "They won't believe it, but if you tell them the news, you have already done what you want to do. Whether you believe it or not is your own destiny." Wei Ran suddenly understood. What Mu Zi said was right. He could not save everyone. If someone believed the self-help post, he should not die. If he didn't believe it, that's all he could do. In the last days, you can only take care of yourself. The biggest problem now is how to transport these large quantities of supplies. The transportation of arms alone is a big problem, Gu Ming said with a frown. Wei Ran was still concerned about the issue of storage, and immediately became anxious. The materials are now available and complete. Could it be that the transportation and storage are the only failures? Do you still have to be attached to others like in the previous life? Storage. Delivery. After breakfast, Gu Ming's procurement trio embarked on the road to prepare for the concentrated delivery of materials. Wei Ran looked at the unloaded supplies in Yu's yard, picked up one of the items and thought about the storage again. Suddenly, the items in my hand just disappeared out of thin air. She was stunned. Wei Ran tried to pick up another item, thinking about putting it away. Sure enough, the item in his hand disappeared again. Could it be because of the rebirth? Has the physique changed? In my previous life, I didn't have supernatural powers until I died, and I never heard of such supernatural powers. But how to take the item out, and can I go in and have a look? Unable to find a clue, she hurried upstairs to look for Mu Ziking brother. Mu Ziking was looking at the relevant information sent from the United States, and when he heard her shout, he thought something happened to her. So he walking out of the study. Wei Ran bumped into her arms. Chapter 5. Huge space hidden on her body. Mu Ziking hugged Wei Ran, who almost fell, frowned slightly and said, "What's the matter? What's the matter?" Seeing that Wei Ran was so excited that she couldn't tell why, she pulled herself into the room. When I went to the study, I saw her looking around the room, as if she was thinking about taking something. Mu Ziking was not in a hurry, waiting for her answer. At this time, Wei Ran walked to a small sofa and put his hands on the sofa. The two small objects, just about the size of a palm, But now I deliberately choose a large object for the sofa. I don't know if it will be successful. She looked at Mu Zikeng, took a deep breath, and then focused on removing it. In the next second, surprise appeared in Mu Zikeng's eyes. The sofa was gone. Seeing that large objects can be removed successfully, Wei Ran jumped up for joy. She happily walked towards Mu Zikeng, then jumped up, hanging on him like a sloth. Brother, I just suddenly discovered that I actually have this kind of ability. In the previous life against the aliens, due to lack of fuel, the vehicle was almost at the stage of being scrapped, which led to the untimely delivery of materials and the chain was broken. It is also common for some bases to be robbed by some big bases or people from their own bases because they failed to hide their supplies. So there is no doubt that this is an extremely important ability. Because this is equivalent to having a mobile inventory, you can go wherever you want without any restrictions. Just don't know how much to charge. Then, Wei Ran got down from Mu Zikeng's body, as if discouraged again, curled his lips. Even if I put it in, I don't know how to take it out, and I don't know what's inside. Mu Zikeng Wei Ran was like an inflated ball just now, and now he is like a decadent little rabbit. That's as cute as it looks. He reached out and stroked Wei Ran's soft heart a few times, making her hair a little fluffy. Mu Zikeng held her two slender arms with his well-defined hands, the corners of his mouth slightly curled up, and his eyes were soft. You are too nervous, relax. Because you just found out that you have supernatural powers, it disturbed you. Close your eyes now, and take your time with nothing else in mind. At the same time, Mu Zikeng also used his mental awareness to help Wei Ran to let go, so that she could adapt as soon as possible. Under Mu Zikeng's soft questioning, Wei Ran slowly closed his eyes. The originally restless heart felt a restrained and steady inner breath to help me gradually get rid of all disturbances, let myself relax all over, thinking about going into the storage room. Wei Ran seemed to be disoriented by a puff of smoke. She kept walking forward. After a while, she saw a narrow door, and she stepped forward to try to open it in doubt. Click ... the door opened. She pushed the door open and saw that it turned into a huge space that couldn't be seen at all. When Wei Ran walked in, she found two small items and the sofa that had just been put away not far away, as well as the still wet clothes that had suddenly disappeared while drying the clothes a few days ago. Not only clothes but also cakes, apples with a bite, and water glasses, which were missing a few days ago, all appeared here. She pinched the wetness of the skirt. It was the same as when it was just washed. And the freshness of the food, if it was outside, it would have rotted away. But the moisture in the wet clothes did not evaporate and the food did not rot, proving that time here is stagnant. In other words, no matter how long you've been here, you've just come in. This space is too big. It would be great if it could be automatically classified into various warehouses. Just as she finished speaking, 3 warehouses suddenly appeared in front of her eyes, and the clothes, food and sofas in the underground were gone. She walked into one of the warehouses in surprise, and the wet skirt was hanging alone by the side. This ability is too amazing. It turns out that you can follow your own ideas to change at will. She looked around excitedly. Suddenly, I saw half of the stairs on the left blocked by the door. She walked over and looked up the weird staircase. But it looked like there was no entrance at all, so Wei Ran climbed up without giving up. Soon we reached the end of half of the stairs, but the stairs were just like decorations and there was no way. She frowned delicately, thought for a while, and stretched out her hand in mid-air, and seemed to touch another door. Wei Ran pushed away slightly. When she stood still and looked up again, she was completely stunned. This is the state of a primeval forest with dense plants and the sound of water, but there is still water. Water is also the most precious resource in the last days. Because of virus invasion, water is the most directly polluted resource. But I haven't seen any animals for the time being, and I'm not sure if there are any living things. But without equipment, Wei Ran didn't dare to go deep for fear of getting lost. She couldn't hide her excitement, but she didn't forget to look behind the door. There was no half of the stairs this time. Wei Ran, who was eager to share with Mu Zikeng, returned to the storage door on the first floor, and stepped on something. She picked it up suspiciously. It was a pink pen with a fluffy ball on it. King looked at the pen that Wei Ran brought back and said slowly, "This is the one I gave you." Wei Ran nodded in agreement. "You gave it to me when I graduated from junior high school. I like it." It disappeared, but it disappeared after only 3 days, so it fell into the storage room. That means Wei Ran has always had this ability, but she has never noticed it, otherwise it would not have developed to scale so far. It's just that supernatural powers will only evolve after the end of the world, so why do they exist now? Even Kang didn't appear until after the end of the world. How could that calm and powerful force appear in the beginning? At that time it was only her and Kang, and the answer was obvious. She opened her eyes and looked at King in surprise and asked, "Brother, do you already have supernatural powers?" "It's one of those superpowers." "Ah!" Wei Ran exclaimed. She floated in midair, and then slowly floating towards King, and finally fell into his warm embrace. "What do you think?" Ran King, who caught Wei Ran, gave a low laugh. Although Wei Ran almost knew the answer, King's confirmation made her smile like a flower. In this life there are sufficient supplies and supernatural powers obtained in advance, and she will never be passively restrained like in the previous life. She will never become a stumbling block for her brother in this life. And Chen Wei, Jiang Ninfeng, and Gu Ming, if they also have special abilities, they can basically form a small team, and they can go out to do missions and improve their strength. Kang, who seemed to know what Wei Ran was thinking, said softly, "They also have supernatural powers." Wei Ran opened Yuan Xing, blinked and stared blankly at King with black and white eyes. "I have accepted too many surprises today, and I can't turn around when I hear the surprises again." But in the dream, neither I nor them Wei Ran was lost in thought. This is incredible. Although Gu Ming was rare, in Chen Wei and Jiang Nanfeng's previous life, they died one after another because they saved their brother and themselves, and that was just when the end happened. Wei Ran was very clear that they had no abilities. Could it be that this life has changed? Chapter 6. The last batch of supplies. King caressed her fair and delicate face, and comforted, "If you can't figure it out, don't think about it. As long as we are better now than what happened in the dream." These words soothed. After leaving Wei Ran, she nodded towards King with a smile. "That's right, since you can't figure it out, don't think about it. As long as King is by your side, that's the best." The villa area where I live now was originally built to sell the unique right of privacy in the city. There is a certain distance between each villa, and the wall itself is 3 meters high, which is generally enough for self-protection. But what King meant was that when the end of the world comes, you can't go out immediately, because the situation is not yet clear and you have to wait for the forces of all parties to balance, and then see which way the situation will go. And this villa covers a relatively large area, so I was afraid that it would be neglected in terms of nursing care, so King installed a new laser protection net developed by the United States on the wall. As long as it is activated, the entire villa will be enveloped by an invisible layer of laser light, forming a protective net. For all objects that forcibly enter, they will be instantly cut into countless pieces by the light emitted by the laser. The number of aliens was very small when they first invaded. Although aliens sometimes attack here, the two sides can still compete. Compared with other cities, Beijing is relatively safe. In the past few days, Wei Ran used the 2 large carts of materials to practice and familiarize himself with the application of space powers again and again at home, and now he can control them with ease. From collecting one by one at the beginning, to spreading out one by one, and then collecting everything in the blink of an eye, and then whatever one is taken randomly will appear. The weapons returned in batches from the United States are stored in warehouses in remote mountains in the outskirts, but soon the next weapons will arrive one after another, and the warehouses are no longer enough. So today, King brought Wei Ran here to see if he could put them all in the space. Wei Ran walked into the warehouse, only to realize that the warehouse was very large, but every place was filled with weapons. There are many weapons that she can't name or recognize, all kinds of weapons, and there are a lot of them. It's just that I have never tried such a huge amount of storage, so I don't know if it will be successful. Music King stood behind her and gently patted her thin but graceful back so that she would not be nervous. Standing in the warehouse, Wei Ran was worried because Music King was standing behind her, so she firmly stretched out her soft hand to the air. In just 1 second, the entire warehouse was emptied. "Ah, brother, it's taken in. It's taken in." Wei Ran turned around and ran to Music King ecstatically. Music King bent his fingers, lightly scratched Wei Ran's small and tall nose and said dotingly, "That's right, my Ran is the most powerful." Then he went to other warehouses to store clothes, quilts, electrical appliances for 4 seasons, food, water, household fuel, medicine, medical equipment, other daily necessities. Even the brand of sanitary napkins she used to stock up. There are also various cars, airplanes, and fighter jets in other warehouses, all of which have been modified to be bulletproof, explosion-proof, and even the chassis are armored. Wei Ran unexpectedly saw that there was a caravan. She looked at Music King suspiciously. Music King took it for granted and said calmly, "If conditions permit, let Ran comfortably sleep with me." Boom. Wei Ran, who was covered in blush, couldn't understand what it meant. Although they slept together these days, Music King felt that it was hard for her to see him, and he was afraid that going too fast would frighten her. So there was no next step for a long time, so Music King took a cold bath every night to survive. Wei Ran said shyly and coquettishly, "Brother hates. It is very fast to take in the space, but because the various warehouses are scattered far away, and they are all located in remote mountainous areas with different distributions, it was already midnight when they returned to the villa after the collection. She has been using the space for storage all day long, but she doesn't feel tired or uncomfortable. It seems that the storage of this space is controlled by herself, but it doesn't consume energy. After running outside for a day, she took a comfortable bath after she came back. When I think about leaving later, I will definitely take Yu Chuang with me. The date of the return of the spacecraft to Earth is getting closer and closer. During this period of time, I followed Music King to collect supplies, and the last batch of arms arrived tonight. Music King and Gu Ming contacted to save time. The last batch of weapons did not need to be transported to the warehouse tonight, but they were directly parked in the territory, and then Music King and Wei Ran went directly to store them. Wei Ran had the ability of space, but Music King didn't tell them that it was related to Wei Ran's safety, and he couldn't get away with it at all, so it was best not to say anything. Music King dispatched a private jet to fly to the border at 3 o'clock, and when he drove Wei Ran slowly out of the villa gate at 2 o'clock, he saw Cheng Shuxian and Ji Furong, who had just arrived, standing beside the gate. Seeing Wei Ran, Cheng Shuxian stepped forward to lean on the car window and shouted in pain, "Xiao Ran. What did I do wrong? Why did you suddenly change your appearance? Is this pervert Music King threatening you? Tell me. I'll take you away from him." Wei Ran originally looked straight ahead quietly, but suddenly turned her head to look coldly at Cheng Shuxian. Wei Ran, who was only thinking about supplies, wanted Music King to drive away directly, regardless of whether Cheng Shuxian would be injured because of it. But I heard him scolding Music King. She turned slightly and reached out to drive, but Music King thought that Cheng Shuxian, who was soft-hearted, wanted to get out of the car and go with him, so he pulled her back with a strong stone. "Where are you going?" Music King suddenly looked at Wei Ran with cold eyes, and his tone was stern. Wei Ran could even feel the coldness emanating from him made the whole carriage chill. She knew that Music King had misunderstood her, and Wei Ran didn't blame him for not trusting her, but she blamed herself for acting too much. Wei Ran stretched out her hand and patted the hand on his wrist that he was holding on to, and then continued to raise her hand to caress his handsome face. Smiling and coaxing, he scolded you. "I'm not happy. I just got out of the car and taught him a lesson. My brother can't scold anyone. Brother, wait for me here. I'll be fine soon. The new family, everyone has to learn the ability to protect themselves, and so does Wei Ran. Although he can't fight like Music King, his skills are good." Wei Ran's words successfully stroked Music King's hair, causing the cold air in the carriage to recede quickly. Music King tensed his body tightly, the coldness in his eyes receded, followed by a smile hidden in his eyes. Suddenly, he put the car in neutral and stepped on the gas pedal to refuel, then suddenly put it in D gear, turned the steering wheel to the other side, and the car flicked beautifully. Ah, two male and female voices cried out in pain. Chang Shuxian and Ji Furong leaned against the car window but were thrown aside by the force of inertia. But Music King calculated the speed. A person who is tail flicked at this level will only suffer from skin injuries. You will meet him when you go down, and your hands will be dirty, Music King murmured while touching her fair and delicate hand. Wei Ran smiled like a flower. My brother is still thoughtful. Ji Furong was lying on the ground in pain, while Chang Shuxian endured the pain to help Ji Furong up, and then looked at Wei Ran in the car with a calm smile and disbelief. Ji Furong yelled at Wei Ran sadly. Wei Ran, why have you become so cruel? Chang Shuxian looked sad, but still felt that Wei Ran was being threatened. Wei Ran's tender eyes disappeared when they turned to Chang Shuxian and Ji Furong. Cruel? Every time she sees these two people, it reminds her of Music King's tragic situation in his previous life before his death. Wei Ran lowered the car window. Her eyes were full of sternness, and coldness overflowed from her pink lips. I said, if you come again, I will kill you. If you want to die, then try again. Chapter 7. Chang Shuxian and Ji Furong, who couldn't tolerate any hypocrisy and were shocked by Wei Ran's ruthlessness, seemed to be choked by someone, unable to speak a word. Chang Shuxian saw Music King holding Wei Ran's hand behind Wei Ran, and then Music King lowered his head and kissed Wei Ran's wrist. Wei Ran smiled shyly, and then Music King galloped away. Hatred welled up in his eyes, and he clenched his hands into fists. Music King. On a private jet. Music King frowned and caressed Wei Ran's wrist. Because Wei Ran's skin is cold and fair, even a little bit of rubbing would turn red. Just now he just held it hard, but now it has become red. Music King lowered his head and kissed her slender wrist like a beast licking a wound, and then searched for the scent to find Wei Ran's delicate lips in a deep sleep. Wei Ran, who was awakened by the kiss, muttered in a daze, making Music King chase after her pink tongue aggressively. The slender hand slipped down and slowly reached into the tail of the clothes. The temperature in the cabin was getting higher and higher, accompanied by the woman's groaning commands that seemed like nothing. Boom. The reminder before the broadcast woke up the two people who were drowning. Then came the captain's voice. Young Master Mu, we will arrive at the location in 15 minutes. Music King pressed his forehead against Wei Ran's, gasping for breath, and looked at Wei Ran, whose eyes were flushed and his lips were red in the moon, and his clothes were messy. He moved a little away, and said viciously, sooner or later I'll kill you. When they reached the border, Music King pulled Wei Ran off the plane. He was as calm as before, as if he wasn't the one who seemed to be eating Wei Ran's ruthless person on the plane just now. Only a little bit of bright red on her fair neck revealed how eager she was at that time. Gu Ming, who was waiting on the tarmac, came up to meet him. Brother Chang, it's ready, but we won't transport it back, so stay here. Music King patted Gu Ming's shoulder, but said without answering this, it's been hard work for a while, just take us there, and I'll take care of the rest. Gu Ming understood and just nodded. Years of getting along, there is some tacit understanding, so there is no need to explain it. Gu Ming took it to a huge container yard, and pointed with his finger, it's all here. Wei Ran could only see the container yard neatly filled with containers at a glance. It's World War II. Gu Ziming had dismissed the guards at the container yard before they came, and before Music King spoke, he also wisely stayed away from the container yard. When Music King nodded to indicate that it was safe, she quickly put the container into the space. In the next second, the container yard full of goods became empty, and there was not a single leaf left. It was not safe at the border, so Music King took Wei Ran and Gu Ming back to Beijing. When he returned to the villa, Wei Ran saw a dozen or so carts parked in the front courtyard and the back lawn, both of which were full of supplies. This should be the last batch. She looked left and right and hurried into the space together with the cart while no one was around. Early the next morning, Chen Wei and Jiang Nanfeng wanted to sort out the supplies. They hired someone to drive back last night, but they only saw a big clean lawn. The two of them ran in quickly, and Chen Wei shouted anxiously, "Brother Jing, the supplies from last night are gone." Gu Ming floated out from behind him, still eating deep-fried dough sticks, and sat in front of him in an orderly manner. Down. Chen Wei and Ji Nanfeng paced back and forth anxiously, but they turned around and saw that Gu Ming was still eating the second deep-fried dough stick leisurely. Jiang Nanfeng jumped up furiously. "You are still eating fried dough sticks. The supplies are gone. Did you hear that?" Gu Ming nodded lightly with a calm face. Then he continued to eat fried dough sticks and drank the hot soy milk next to him. After last night, he was already familiar with it. At this moment, Mu Ziking came down from downstairs calmly. Jiang Nanfeng hurried over but was about to speak and report when Mu Ziking waved his hand to stop him. He sat down on the sofa in the living room first, and then clicked around the other empty seats with his fingers. The three of them immediately understood that Mu Ziking wanted to tell them this. Mu Ziking's dark eyes slowly turned, and he looked at the three people who had already sat down. He crossed his long legs elegantly and lazily, and placed his hands on the armrest of the sofa casually, with his bony fingers igniting once and for all. "What I told you before will happen one after another, and the end will come in 3 days. If you don't want to follow me, I will give you supplies to protect yourself." He paused and said coldly, "Then, just cut it off. The days to come are to truly deliver the battle behind, and no hypocrisy can be tolerated. If you have chosen to take a bifurcated road from the beginning, it proves that you are not in the same path, and there will be no affection to say goodbye in the future." Jiang Nanfeng was anxious first and said to Mu Ziking with red eyes, "Brother Cheng, I grew up with you. You are my brother. No matter where you go, I will follow you wherever you go." After finishing speaking, he also wiped away the tears that hadn't fallen with his arms like a child. Chen Wei looked at Mu Ziking solemnly. "Brother Cheng, I also grew up with you. If I leave here, I will have no home, and I will never leave." After a while, Chen Wei and Jiang Nanfeng looked at there is no Gu Ming who has not spoken all this time. Jiang Nanfeng's heart was cold, and he didn't have any confidence in Gu Ming. Although Gu Ziming didn't grow up together, he had known him for more than 10 years. "I usually play best with him." Moreover, Mu Ziking trusted him and valued him very much, otherwise he would not have entrusted him with all the business in the United States. What if he was going? Gu Ming raised his eyes and saw that everyone was looking at him, and puzzled expression appeared on his always indifferent and delicate face. "I said 10 years ago that wherever Brother Cheng was, there would be me, Gu Ming, until I died." These three people are extremely loyal to Mu Ziking, not only because of Mu's family's funding or the kindness of support, but because Mu Ziking treats them like brothers. It's never a dang but a brother. So they absolutely follow the lead of Mu Ziking. Mu Ziking looked at the three of them firmly, nodding slightly. "There are some things that need not be said between men. I have dealt with all the materials in the warehouse before, including the materials in the courtyard last night. As for the materials," Mu Ziking still briefly mentioned them. When Chen Wei and Jiang Nanfeng heard that the supplies had disappeared, they were completely relieved from worrying about this matter. Since Mu Ziking said that the materials have been processed, as for the processing method and how to handle it, if Mu Ziking didn't tell, the three of them wouldn't ask either. And the three of them would not have disagreements in the direction that Mu Ziking didn't trust them, but they all knew each other by coincidence, and if Mu Ziking didn't say it, there must be a reason he couldn't say. Chapter 8. The apocalypse is coming. Now we have a piece of international news. The spacecraft that the United States conducted space exploration half a year ago returned to the territory of the United States today. Various parties speculated whether the ship brought back any substantive news, and the United States denied it. The voice in the room, the news anchorwoman's voice, was calm and calm. Wei Ran stood on the balcony of the room and looked into the distance, muttering, "The end of the world is finally here." Everyone gathered in the living room at night. Wei Ran told everyone what to pay attention to in the future. At the beginning, there were very few aliens. Although their IQs cannot be compared with humans, they are also conscious, quick-moving, and have a very sensitive sense of smell. Just like sharks, as long as there is a little blood, they can smell it for 10 miles. The United States, they knew that the ship that came back was supposed to be a dangerous ship, and although they had made sufficient preparations to encircle and suppress them, most of the aliens escaped from the ship and hid them. She took Mu Ziking to the secret satellite that was behind the ship at the time. Send the video to everyone. Inside is a hideous and terrifying appearance of aliens. It is black and 2 meters tall. It looks like a giant lizard when it crawls on the ground, and it looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex when it stands up. In particular, the gums are completely exposed, the mouth is full of sharp teeth, with strips of rice and a long tail. Chen Wei asks suspiciously if the number is small, then we can take advantage of the small number and kill them. Wei Ran smiled helplessly. Aliens are good at hiding, they like darkness and don't like sunlight. Aliens live in groups like ants, the division of labor is clear. And the fecundity is strong because they can reproduce as long as they are female heteromorphs, and it only takes 1 month from mating to the birth of the heteromorphs. But fortunately, female heteromorphs are relatively rare, otherwise the consequences would be disastrous. Others imagining the scene where the Earth is full of aliens, I can't help but take a deep breath. Guming fumbled and said, then they just arrived in the country of America today. That is to say, after they breed, they should come out in 2 to 3 months. Wei Ran was solemn and silent. Mu Ziking frowned slightly and said not only the aliens but also the virus they brought from the planet Ashura, it won't matter if it spreads in the air, but it will overlap with the water and pollute the water source. As long as people drink the water source will be poisoned, and people will no longer be humans but zombies. Wei Ran nodded. So what we faced at the beginning was not aliens but hordes of zombies. They can eat people, and once bitten or caught, it will be indirectly infected and become a zombie. The people in the living room were silent for a while. Zombies can't get close, they can only be killed from a distance, and you must ensure that you can never get hurt in the crowd of zombies. But fortunately they have all inspired their abilities, and it is barely possible to protect themselves for the time being. But even though they have supernatural powers in the typing world before, except for Mu Ziking, the other 3 were just playing around and didn't pay much attention. Just like if you keep exercising, you will increase your body function, but if you let a person who has never exercised go for a 5-kilometer run, it will be terribly uncomfortable. Moreover, abilities are classified by level. Level 1 is the lowest level, and there is no upper limit. Mu Ziking took the lead in breaking the silence, and said coldly, analyzing and making plans. Although zombies are in groups, they are better to deal with than aliens. They are just for us to train in abilities. Ran said that zombies will also have high levels. High-level zombies will have consciousness and thoughts, and this level will allow us to quickly increase our strength. According to the level, in these 3 months, except for Ran, each of us must break through level 50. With Mu Ziking spoke to guide the direction during this period, and the others were a little flustered, and they all decided to go back now. They all responded yes. Brother Cheng. Before going to bed at night, Gu Ming turned on the laser shield of the villa for the first time, and an inconspicuous white light flashed over the villa and then disappeared. The white light made Wei Ran shrink back into Mu Ziking's arms. Mu Ziking's fingers wandered along her voluptuous curves, noticing that she was restless. Gently said, "What's the matter?" Ran, can't sleep. Wei Ran poked out her little head that was buried in his arms, with a little worry in her eyes. Brother, in my dream at this time we are hiding in the basement of the villa. I know that my brother is very powerful, but I'm just a little scared. Although it's much better now than in the previous life, I have prepared materials in advance, and I am a mobile storage space so I can put it away and take it away. But she was still worried, although the zombies were low level, if they were injured a little. If she lost Mu Ziking again. Wei Ran was so afraid that her body trembled a little. Mu Ziking hugged her tightly, as if he wanted to insert her whole body into his. He patted Wei Ran on the back lightly and gradually calmed her down. Don't be afraid of Ran. In the dark night, Music King's dark eyes lit up, and the words he said were heard clearly in Wei Ran's ears. As long as my Ran is here, I will come back to see you alive and well. The three of them who are eager to fight have been using their abilities and hand tricks in the courtyard these days. The hand formula is equivalent to the key to activate the ability. As long as one has a supernatural power, a set of supernatural skills related to it will appear in the brain and memorize. Although these masters didn't improve it before, it was because of the novelty and because it really reminded them of the scenes of chanting spells like in movies. So from time to time I would play in private, and it is still possible to retract and release freely, but the power is not very good. Gu Ming's main ability is thunder and his auxiliary is electricity. Jiang Feng's main ability is ice and his auxiliary is water. Chen Wei's main ability is fire and his auxiliary is wind. Wei Ran looked at their abilities and felt a little bit more excited because their abilities were all in the top 10 in the ranking of abilities. Ranked first is the ability of spiritual consciousness, which has strong attack power and indestructible defense. Other abilities can only have one master and one assistant at most, but as long as the spiritual awareness ability is high, he can have other abilities at will, or even all of them. That's why it's called omnipotence. Wei Ran had only seen one almighty person before his death, and that was Music King. Chen Wei, roast it for me. Jiang Nanfeng took out a sweet potato and asked Chen Wei to roast it. Chen Wei clasped the four fingers of his left hand together and pressed the palm of his right hand with his thumb up. Immediately, the thumb of the left hand left, a small fire appeared in the palm of the hand, and then he pushed the palm suddenly, and a big fire shot up. But when he went to sweet potato, he turned into a little flame. Ha 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 ha! Jiang Nanfeng was laughing until he was about to roll to the ground. Chen Wei sneered and ran towards him with the fire in his palm. Jiang Nanfeng ran away, and the two of them chased round and round like this childishly. Wei Ran also laughed so hard that she couldn't stand upright. At this time, an urgent news came out on TV. Yesterday, Huaxia Hospital received a large number of people suspected of being in a coma due to poisoning. The current situation was that they fell into a coma. This morning, a group of patients have woken up, but they are unconscious and accompanied by strong aggressive behavior. The source of the poisoning has not been found yet. Huaxia Hospital is currently blocked. Citizens are requested not to approach Huaxia Hospital, because it is temporarily impossible to confirm whether any poisoned people have escaped from the hospital. Citizens are requested to stay at home as much as possible. People infected with the virus will mutate after 10 hours. If the news is blocked, it proves that the hospital has basically become the first zombie spot. And there must be more than one such. Music King planned to drive outside for a drive to sense the undiscovered zombie spots. Wei Ran transferred a 7-seater business car from the space because this car is usually unobtrusive in the streets and alleys. Anyway, the car has been modified and safety can still be guaranteed. Wei Ran took a few more bags of guns and put them in the car, but Music King told them not to shoot unless necessary, so as not to cause unnecessary trouble to the police.